Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the 2021 edition of the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. I'm Tennille Nuwalo, the Education Coordinator for ttff. This year, we have an abundance of films and industry events that consist of masterclasses, workshops, presentations, panels, talks, info sessions, and a new discussion series entitled Ask the Veterans. We will also have Q&As and we'll be live with the filmmakers. So please be sure to check out our website or social media pages to find all the events or films that you might be interested in. Lots happening this week. So today, I'd like to welcome you to the Understanding Risk in Filmmaking panel. All the panels are brought to you with the support of Shell, Trinidad and Tobago Limited. Understanding the creative side of producing a great film is not always enough to ensure success. Investors need to feel confident in the filmmaker's ability to return a profit. Understanding the business side of filmmaking is a valuable asset when approaching investors for your film. This knowledge can also help to secure you a continued career in the industry. This discussion will address both the filmmaker and the investor's point of view on risk in filmmaking. The panel will give insights on how successful filmmakers turn investments into profit and explain why it's so important to take the risk and invest. Our moderator today is Jason Lindsay. Let me tell you a little bit about Jason. He is an animation producer and the managing director for Full Circle Animation, the leading full-service animation studio in the Caribbean. Under his leadership, Full Circle has produced a plethora of animated projects that include outsourced production from international TV producers, music videos, and public service announcements for the United Nations, CARICOM Secretariat, and other regional NGOs. Along with managing the studio, he writes and directs many of the company's projects. He has been the creator and co-producer of several animated properties developed by the company. In the past 5 years, Full Circle has been outsourced to produce animation for Disney, Universal Studios, Netflix, DreamWorks TV, HBO, and Nickelodeon. In January 2020, he was selected as one of the 50 producers to watch for global kids content at the Reed Middams International TV Showcase, MIPTV in Cannes, France. MIPTV is the second largest market for TV content globally. So without further ado, I will now hand you over to Jason, who will introduce you to the rest of our panelists. Jason? Jason, you're muted.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. Thanks a lot for that intro, Tennille. This morning, we're going to focus on where the rubber hits the road with respect to the creative pursuit of filmmaking as a commercial product and what are the unique opportunities and risks involved in producing film in a way that's not only attractive creatively or financially, but in other ways that sort of transcend those two areas. Before I introduce the panelists, I'd first like to observe all protocols and thank Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival for prioritizing this topic on their program this year. It is because it's been one of those elusive areas in filmmaking, which continued discourse always helps. I'd also like to thank the sponsors. I mean, Tennille said it as well, but I'd like to give an extra shout out to the sponsors for seeing value in supporting the film community and the creative industries in this way, which is meaningful. On this very topic, we're talking about value this morning, and it's good to see corporate entities stepping up and supporting that discourse. This morning, we have an exciting group that I'm happy to be a part of, and hopefully they'll share their ideas. I first want to start with Kareem Mortimer. He's a Bahamian filmmaker who's known for such films as Chance, The Eleutherian Adventure, Float, I'm Not a Dummy, Children of God, which many of you may have heard, Windjammers, and The Passage. His debut feature, Children of God, in 2010, is the first narrative feature from the Caribbean with LGBT themes. And another project, Windjammers, which he co-directed with Richard Von Moore, I hope I pronounced that right, Kareem, is a children's film that deals with racism. Children of God was shown on the television channel Showtime, as well as distributed in over 24 countries around the world, And in 2014, Passage was awarded an African Movie Academy Award for the best short film from the diaspora. So we're very excited to have Kareem with us and sort of share his experience. Lorraine O'Connor, which is not a stranger at all to the industry, for many years she's been an icon in the creative industries and with film in particular. She spent her professional life as a cultural activist and a producer and a promoter of the culture in Trinidad and Tobago, whether it be through film, fashion, and music. I also just learned that she was a doula this week, so that was interesting. She's produced numerous documentaries and film and has worked on many international productions, film in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the trendy music label Rituals, which she co-founded and managed in the 90s. And some of you will remember the historic Reiner's Music Store, which she also fell under her ownership. She has also managed artists and produced fashion shows for major events, and she has extensive experience across the creative industries here in Trinidad. She's been involved, as many of us here in Trinidad and Tobago are aware, in the phenomenal success of Calypso music icon, Calypso Rose, and has worked consistently with a team behind soca star Marshall Montano, while she's co-managed the Rising. I mean, I would like to say no longer Rising, but she's co-managed Nyla Blackman. In 2016, she was the line producer for the feature film Bazodi, which opened in over 130 cinemas across the US. And in 2017, she was the local fixer for the famous CNN TV series Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown in Trinidad and Tobago in 2018. She's also been the local facilitator for The Amazing Race, CBS TV, which aired in October here. Lorraine also is a director on the board for Film TT, which is a company responsible for film development and the film industry in Trinidad and Tobago. And she also, fairly recently, I think, but she'll tell us more about this when she speaks, manages C15 Studios, which is a Caribbean financial services company linking creatives to financing opportunities. So we're very excited to hear more about that. Our third panelist this morning, who will hopefully be joining us a little later on, is Michael Mooleedhar, who is a Trinidadian director and producer whose works include documentaries, music videos, and film. His first feature film, Green Days by the River, opened at the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival in 2017, as many would remember, and it won the People's Choice Award for the Best Feature Film Narrative and the Best Trinidad and Tobago Feature Film in 2017. Michael's directorial debut, Queens of Curepe in 2008, is a revealing documentary focusing on transsexual workers from Trinidad and Tobago and other territories in the Caribbean who work the streets of Curepe, a town founded along Trinidad and Tobago's east-west corridor. So it's an exciting group of panelists that we have this morning, and I sort of want to start by asking each of the panelists to sort of share their perspective. I want to start with Lorraine because of, as I said, she has been the backbone of the industry and she has touched really in each of the different elements, all from the creative all the way to the financial, to sort of give us her view on what she thinks are some of the more salient issues when it comes to understanding risk in film. Lorraine?
Yes, hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Jason, for the introduction and the word icon. I'm not ready for that word quite yet. So I'm still very humble and learning every day from everybody, and that's what I love about the creative industries. Is we always feel we are learning and growing. So thank you to, the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival for inviting me and asking me to speak this morning. The salient points, well, the first thing I want to say is, taking risk in the creative industries, we're not very brave, really, in the Caribbean, per se. We know this. We know that our biggest hurdle, really, as a producer, is finding financing, finding the money. And, why do we think that is? And as I've had the opportunity to be on both sides, I realized that we don't have enough data to give the financial investors to comfort them, to make them feel reassured that, yes, this would be a good investment. They're not, even the, like comps, when we talk about comps, comparing, we cannot go online and get information about films done in the Caribbean. So I think that's a problem that needs to be solved, because, and then also we need to show a positive result. We have to take at least 1 or 2 projects and show that they can generate revenue. I think that's very important, because financial people, let's be clear, they're there to make money. They don't have emotions and passions and stuff like creatives have. It's about, the bottom line. And if we can show that by investing $1 million US, you can get $2 million US, they're interested, right? But we haven't actually been able to do that successfully in the Caribbean. So I think that's really one of the hurdles. And I do want to keep the conversation very positive, because I believe, I'm still here. As you said, it's 30-something years I'm doing this. So I believe. And I want to say we need to believe. We need to believe in our projects. We need to believe in the voice that we have as Caribbean people. And I just want to put in, a mention here. So C15 Studios. So I've recently joined this organization, been asked to be their general manager. And it's very, very exciting, because here we have a financial entity. They're part of a financial group who traditionally invest in construction, energy, the traditional sectors, who are willing and looking to invest in the creative industry. And they've been trying, they've attempted, they were actually behind the marketing of Bazodi. They invested in that. They invested in Caribbean Next Top Model. But without really a vision and a proper direction at the time. So I kind of say they were in hibernation, and I'm here to bring them out into the light. So really, they've asked me to, develop a vision and a concept and how a strategy to bring cash flow solutions to creatives. So that's really what we're aiming to do. What we are going to offer products that you can't go to the bank and get, right? Because the banks want a different level of collateral and reassurance. And we are here ready and putting it in place. Of course, it's still brand new. I've only now started them 4 months in. So our website isn't up as yet, and it will be very soon, where we'll be explaining more of this. But I just want to say the outlook is positive. The outlook is positive because there are people willing to put money behind the Caribbean creative industry. And already for me, that's huge. There are people who are willing to hire me to do this job. Just that confidence made me feel very positive and uplifted. So I would let somebody else maybe talk a little bit.
Exciting. That's very exciting, Lorraine. And that's something I think later in the discussion we definitely want to talk about, because you have the unique perspective of being on both sides, and now you're well placed within the financial arena. With Kareem, I sort of want to take it a little differently on the other side of that. Kareem in the Caribbean is what we call, Kareem, I don't know if you know the Trinidadian lingo, but Kareem in the Caribbean is what we call a world boss when it comes to putting the Caribbean on the map with respect to film. Well, I know Children of God, but obviously he has put us on the map. He's getting the networks, he's getting the interest. So Kareem, what I want to ask you in this context is I sort of want to take it a step back and ask, when you approach, a film or a film concept like Children of God or Passage, the first thing I want to know is, what is your main aspiration outside the story that you want to tell? So you have this story that you want to tell. What is your main? So what are you thinking is your priority in terms of getting this film out there? And then on the flip side of that aspiration, I know what you would consider ideal. I want to understand, just when you think, okay, this is ideally what I would want, what do you then feel is the holy crap risk factor, the thing that you're most concerned about with respect to reaching that ultimate goal? I want to say it like that because it may be financial, it may not be, but I want to understand your thinking when you set out on that journey Don't forget to unmute, Kareem.
Thank you for having me. I do understand the lingo. I am part Trinidadian myself, so I get it. My main objective with any film that I've done. So I've made 3 features. I'm about to shoot my 4th next year, and I just wrapped a TV series, a 6-part TV series last month. And then I'm on a. We just got a production grant from Sundance to do a documentary about a Bahamian painter, and institutionalized racism. So my first aim is that it has to be a project that I'm absolutely passionate about, right? And so that's my first thing, because I remember the difference between my second feature and my third feature, which was Cargo, was about 5. This is narrative filmmaking. It was about 5 years, and people were like, "Where were you?" And I was like, "I was working. I was like writing the script, and I was raising the money, and I was trying to sell the last one." And so my first aim is like, because in independent filmmaking, especially in the Caribbean, where I am in the Caribbean, in the Bahamas, we don't have a lot of institutional money. So the money that I raise is from private equity. And so finding that story that's going to last me the 5 years, but also finding that story that I believe is going to connect with an audience somewhere, and an audience that is going to appreciate it and love it and shed new light on something. Like, I always believe, and I really believe this, that the Caribbean is a microcosm for what happens everywhere in the world, and it's the future, and it'll always be fresh just by the makeup of our people, it's and so that's my primary aim. And then the scariest thing, to answer the second part of your question, is it's also twofold, right? So I've been lucky to have investors that are also passionate about the stories that I'm telling and connecting with them, but also the money. I have to respect the equity, that there is some sort of exchange, and whether or not that is seen by millions of people, a lot of people, that may be enough, for some investors, or some investors see it as investing in a career. It's not going to be number 1, number 2 film that hits, but it would probably be 4 or 5 or 6. But the thing is to go on this journey, and as I'm on this journey, that somehow one film exceeds the next, and that it hits another benchmark. And so my fear is not having that reach the benchmark, because the people that I approach are people that see a vision. It's like, this is where we're going, and we have to make sure that we're all here. We've all been working a long time. Obviously, some of us longer than others, but even in that long time, it's still a very nascent industry, and we're clearing the path. And so we want to clear a path that people can look at and like, we did that, and it was good, and people saw it, and they were moved by it. And my biggest fear is not having that happen.
Awesome, interesting. And just to follow on from that, you raised some interesting points. Do you think that when you sort of have a clear concept or a clear vision, or when you have your package ready, do you find given the experience now, having gone through this for a lot of films and a lot of shows, do you go to acquire private equity and support outside the Caribbean? Do you start outside the Caribbean, whether it be in diaspora abroad, or do you start within your community in the Bahamas or the Caribbean? What is your first step out to get that support?
So the best advice that I got that worked for me when I started out was, someone told me, is to start with the people around you, the people that want to see you succeed. And you use that as you get them to it's not, you don't get them to invest in you. They want to invest in you. And you use that to reach more people. And you create a product that people like, and then people's like, I want to join this movement. I want to join this train of wherever this is going to go. I want to have this energy. And so my first step is to start with the people that are around me. That's how I started. And as I grew, that circle got wider and wider, and I was introduced to more people, and more people that way.
Awesome. One of the things that I sort of struggle with, I mean, I was born, well, I don't want to say born, but I was trained as a financial engineer, and I was a development economist in another life. And then I evolved into being an animation producer. But one of the things I noticed before, when being on that side of it and sort of looking at film, even though, as you said, you want to invest, there are a lot of facets of the industry that somebody in the outside may not understand and may not be intimate with. It has actually what caused me to take this step to learn more, and then I stayed in it. But one of the things that I have found that seemed very good when I was on the outside, but then seemed very complex when I became a filmmaker on the inside, is the region as a Caribbean, right? So you see the market. For me, I didn't appreciate Caribbean broadcasting and the intricacies of that. I sort of saw that the Caribbean was one entity, and if I make a film, it'll be embraced by the entire Caribbean, not appreciating how unique the different islands in the Caribbean are culturally. And a lot of times they want to see, you know what I mean? So they're these very narrow distribution channels that somehow don't allow products to transcend. And that's what makes it difficult. So you have to create your storytelling in a way that, is tough. The whole broadcasting element is tough. So I want to sort of ask Lorraine, how do you, so C15, tell us a little bit more about C15. From what I understood you say about C15, and from what I heard before, their vision was trying to transcend that, right? To try to, the C is for the Caribbean, if I recall correctly, right? So and trying to help us, sort of take out those little barriers and create this big pipeline that is trans-Caribbean or inter-Caribbean. How do you see C15 sort of helping with that in the approach to film?
Well, definitely the mandate is Caribbean to the world. And it's, we always look North America, whatever. We don't look like we are a treasure trove. I see the Caribbean as Kareem was saying, that's so fresh. We're so fresh, but we're so young too. So that's why it's taken us a while to figure out how to be more cohesive as the islands. But as you said, each one is so different because there's, each one has such different historical backgrounds. If you take an island like Haiti and then an island like, Martinique, it's like, it's completely different background, support system, services, whatever. So you can't necessarily just have a broad brush across the Caribbean. I don't think that would ever work, because that's what creates the fact that we're always fresh, because we're always renewing and presenting this diversity. But how do we present that as a cohesive image to the world, or as a one voice, if you want? And I think we can do that. And at C15, of course, I'm going to attempt it with my team. We have a great team because the board actually has some, we have somebody from Jamaica, we have somebody from St. Lucia. So we are very Caribbean focused for sure. And, I want to open. Right now, of course, I'm very close to the Trinidad world, the Trinidad creative world, because this is where I've lived and grown. But, I'm extending an invitation right now, right here, we are looking for Caribbean content. We are looking for Caribbean creatives. And one thing I want to say too is, what Kareem made another good point. it's not necessarily an investment in a project. It's an investment in an individual or a company or a vision or an entity. You know, it's like we want to build. So 15 is the 15 creative sectors. And I think that's also very interesting because nobody has been as broad as that in terms of their approach. In its previous incarnation, C15 really just focused on film and TV and media. But the 15 now, I've broadened it to encompass from animation as a number one on our list because it begins with the A, all the way down to wellness, because wellness is a huge thing in my life. You know, I also am an aromatherapist. I'm into essential oils. I'm a doula. I'm all about natural and healthy lifestyles. So anyway, we're going from animation to wellness, and with 15 creative sectors, all this will be up on our website when it's up. And I want to embrace the Caribbean, and I think, as I said, I don't want to change that diversity. I want to keep it as fresh as Kareem was saying, but how can we take that freshness, present it to the world, and they buy into it? They're already buying into it. We know, we who are in the industry, we know that the world is looking at us. We have a voice, we have something to say. So it's ready to stand out. And I want to congratulate Kareem on your, achievements. Bravo, that's great. And we need more, as you said, more Kareems in the Caribbean doing this work and people believing in them and supporting them financially.
Hashtag Will Boss. I just want to pause for a second to remind and advise the viewership that if you have, as we have the discussion, I'm going to open it up at the end to make the dialogue a little more fluid, but we are accepting questions via the platform. So feel free to ask, and the moderator will get those questions to me so that I make sure we share it with the board. At any time, you can go ahead and do that. I mean, so that's exciting. That's very exciting, Lorraine. And I think that's exactly what we need. And you're right. I don't think that an endeavor like what you're doing at C15 will stand alone on film, right? I mean, there's this massive, I don't even want to call it a story pipeline. It's almost like a culture pipeline, right? That, that is there, that is in harmony, with how we live and how we, and there's a lot of cultural activity in that. So I think it's a great idea. In the past, and currently, I know that there have been other endeavors and platforms that have tried to promote the culture and the film within the Caribbean. I mean, the one that I'm most familiar with is Caribbean Tales, who have continued to endeavor to promote our culture and our films. I sort of want to highlight, I mean, for me now, looking at it as a consumer of Caribbean film and Caribbean content, one of the things that I have found, and I'm still trying to solve this as a producer, but as a consumer, is that, we in an area, sometimes there's this anomaly about the Caribbean, right? We seem small, but, you have to appreciate that we're not that small, right? We are very rich and diverse in culture. I mean, you mentioned, Lorraine, like St. Kitts and Guadeloupe, but even within Trinidad and Tobago are two completely separate cultures, right? I mean, even though we're one republic, and that exists across the Caribbean. One of the areas I have had struggles is access, right? I find it, and I mentioned this before, very difficult to access content and film, even when we want to access it, like Children of God. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people here, the passage, maybe wondering, how can I see that now? You know what I mean? I don't want to say they have made it difficult for us to access our own content, but it has been difficult. I remember Tennille Niwalo, who is, behind the scenes and the film festival, when she was producing with Dersha Beresford, The Cutlass. You know what I mean? I mean, we were discussing it at the beginning, and then I saw The Cutlass, come out. Now, if you miss that premiere, whether it be at the festival or in the cinema, there's so many people that want to see it immediately, They don't want to wait. They don't want to subscribe. And it feels sometimes that we've been held back from viewing it immediately within the Caribbean. I don't know, Kareem, what do you think? I mean, where do you see the barriers in people being able to get to you and people being able to, whether it be view or support? What do you see the biggest barriers that exist?
It's hard to have that access right away, I really struggle with this, especially with the last film, Cargo, where people say they always want to see it, and the rights are gone in the US and most of the countries, and we can't really access here in the Caribbean. And it came out, I completed in 2017, but it came out commercially maybe 2019 or 2020. And now they just did a digital only release. And so with that digital only release, like if you're in a certain territory, you just can't access the work. So I would implore filmmakers, if we can carve out our Caribbean rights, and have those things available, because it really kills me that the first audience for that film can't really access it. And so now I know better for next time. It's just like, I need to carve those out. And obviously, there are many people that are doing a great job getting Caribbean content out. For example, Filmco, and Caribbean Tales, but sometimes you have to go sometimes where you have the MG, and sometimes the guys with the MG, you have to get them. You just have to negotiate better.
Just tell us what the MG is.
An MG is a minimum guarantee. So when you sell a film, a distributor gives you money against your future profits. So they can run anywhere from like 25,000 to like 7 figures. You know what I mean? Yeah. And sometimes that's your first sort of recoupment for investors.
No, I mean, I imagine even for somebody who's gotten to where you've gotten to with respect to distribution, a discussion like that cannot be easy. Especially when you're dealing with some of the bigger networks or distributors. I mean, even though those networks or distributors may not recognize the Caribbean as it may not be a big piece of the puzzle, for many filmmakers, negotiating to carve that out may be intimidating. You know what I mean? We don't want to upset the apple cart, so to speak. Do you think that, and it's tough, right? We're individual, small filmmakers relative to those, what we see as, huge networks and distributors. Do you think that in the Caribbean, we need more, a model that is more consistent with like the US model of representation and agents or clearing houses to support filmmakers negotiate those deals? I mean, I don't know. You tell us your experience. Do you go in as an individual, or do you go in those discussions with distributors with representation? What do you think is the best way for filmmakers here to sort of navigate and have those discussions? Because they may not be, they just may not be well equipped for that.
I think you should also always state what your desire is. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, because your content, if your content is enough for them to want to buy, then they should come with the terms that you desire. I think that should be okay. And I think that if you are new in the business, if you have someone that you trust, like an agent or a manager or even a lawyer, that can negotiate that on your behalf, that's really, really important. I can tell you about my first film, and I'm happy to share this big lesson. So I made a film. Well, obviously you brought it up. So I made a film called Children of God, and with Children of God, I sold it to Showtime myself. I sold it to Germany myself. I sold the UK rights and the US rights myself. And that was just like looking up like who distributes this, what do they need, and let me call them and let me figure this out and do that. And so I got a sales agent. And the sales agent was like, I'm going to sell your film and I'm going to make you some money. So they took it and they sold the film to an additional 28 countries. I made well into six figures and sold the film from 2011. And I think the last sale was 2018. And so it was a slow burn. And at the end of the day, I got a bill saying that I owed them $30,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I learned my lesson and I was like, okay, first of all, I'm going to involve myself with people I really trust. And I'm going to, I'm going to have a lawyer to look at things and vet things and know when things aren't right. And I'm happy to say that I was able last year to get own. I now own that film. I own my film now entirely.
Wow.
That's my first film entirely. Like it belongs to me. And so I get to decide what happens with that first film. But I think that I also didn't want to upset the apple cart. And I think I should have, because I ran a theater a couple of years ago. And sometimes the people that make the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You know,
squeaky wheel gets the grease. Yeah.
Gets the grease, and you have to say what be reasonable or unreasonable, whatever it is. You know, the thing is that they just don't know how to handle the Caribbean, and that's the point. It's not even like if they think it's important or not; they just don't have the tools to do that. So they want to keep continuing on the system that's always been working. But unfortunately for us, I think that system is being disrupted. And because the system is being disrupted, everybody has to think of everything, of how content is managed and distributed in a new way, which provides us, more opportunities. I'm hoping and believing.
Nice. Lorraine, I know you, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that as well, because I know that you have and do manage artists and creatives in different elements of the creative industry. I'm not aware whether you represent anybody in film, but as Kareem was talking about it, I thought of you and I started to wonder, why is it that it almost seems like in music, music, almost everybody has a manager or somebody representing them for these pursuits, especially when it comes to the commercial side of it. But is there some reason, or is it that I'm not aware with respect to representation in film? Am I missing something?
No, I think traditionally we're not set up like that. We basically we are, tendency to have the managers in music and so on, but in film I think that's just how, because it's such a young industry, the music. I don't know the real reason behind it, but I will say that people have approached me to manage them in film. But I kind of was moving away from management at that time. And I do want to say, though, how important it is that you have people like that. Like, one thing I've understood, like we all are very versatile in the Caribbean. That's part of our asset too, is like the versatility. But versatility is not always the best way. Like you need those people. You need a good agent. You need a good manager. Like managers have a job to do. You need a financial person. Somebody could help you. Creative people don't necessarily want to balance their bank accounts and collect bills. It's hard to get them to send you the receipts and so on is a challenge. So, you need people to do those things. That's why they have those people. I'm not going to go on a set and try and put makeup on somebody because I don't have a clue. I don't even want to put makeup on myself, so far less to put on somebody. So, you have to know your strengths. And I really think that we are still building our industry. And I think, yes, people need to step into the role of management for film producers and directors and so on. We have super talented directors in the Caribbean that should be represented. I also want to say, piggybacking a bit on what Kareem was saying, that I don't think that people know how to really market the Caribbean properly in North America, for example. And as you mentioned, the Caribbean is huge because not just the actual Caribbean people first living in the Caribbean, then all of those living in North America, Europe, wherever. They're all over the world, as we know, Japan, everywhere. Then what about the friends of those people, which are the Caribbean, the people who have fallen in love with the Caribbean? So we have a very wide market, but we don't know, nobody really, if you said to me, Lorraine, hire a PR firm, to represent Bazodi. Let's use Bazodi as an example. I think Bazodi opened in 120 cinemas across the US and lasted a week because they didn't have a proper publicity and a promotion strategy of how to reach, the diaspora. We were getting calls from the United States saying, where it gone? I mean, I now want to go and see it and it's not showing any cinema anymore because it ran for a week. And really and truly, we should have, zeroed in those communities and built the hype in those communities. And then they would have carried it, mainstream. That's how it's done. I mean, like, one thing with being older or wiser is that you have experience. And so I've really seen now what not to do. And that's why in this new incarnation that I am embracing, I'm hoping I'll be able to apply, and advise and show people like this is how we'll be successful, and get the message out there.
Lorraine, that's exactly why I use the term icon unashamedly. You know what I mean? Because no, I mean, you have it, but do not take for granted the benefit of that insight or the benefit of the insight that Kareem has given us when, he telling us, he went out there, you got Germany, you got Showtime. Those are roads that a lot of us have never traveled, and we do not know how to even forget walking down the road. We do not know how to get to the start of that road. It could be intimidating. And there are a lot of people in the Caribbean, I believe, Lorraine, with different degrees who are not necessarily filmmakers, but with different degrees of those sorts of experiences. I mean, in Kareem's case, as he mentioned, he did all those things on his own when starting out. But the people who have just walked that road, right? So I just think that, I don't have the answer, but I put it out there. How can we access that support? And, the funny thing is with that, then I'm sort of wondering, I'm wondering, whether sometimes it's not so much a matter of competence, I mean, the skill set to sit down and write a script at the very beginning may be very different from the skill set to put on makeup. But a lot of times a director or a producer may have competence. But I think a big part of it as well is focus and brain space, right? It's capacity. You just may not have the brain space to do all of those things and give 100%.
Absolutely.
And I know many others, I mean, people who listen, many others who may be on different sides of that would have had different experiences. I know producers out there who want to get closer to filmmakers and find that, very difficult, want to support. I mean, for certain things in the Caribbean, outside of film, I don't want to say outside of film, but, canvassing film and going on business in general, I feel like there tends to be a little distrust. I mean, Kareem sort of touched on his first experience and how that changed his approach with the other experiences. There tends in Caribbean business, there tends to be a certain level of insecurity or distrust across the board. And, I just don't know if we need a system of more institutionalized support, like through agency and management. Because for me, I mean, Kareem, the words that you're saying, I mean, it seems intimidating. I went out there and I sold it to Showtime. You know what I mean? I mean, how do we,
Let me tell you how it happened. And
we're very excited to hear that.
It's been enough years that I can divulge this secret. I am from Nassau, Bahamas. I was born to a teen mother at 15. She was 15 when she had me, so I'm not a person of privilege. But I made it my business to go to festivals, and I made it a business to see what festivals were happening and who was speaking on a festival. So I would research this festival called the Pan-African Film Festival that happens in Los Angeles. And there was this panel I watched, and there was a lady from Showtime that was head of acquisitions at the time. She's no longer there. And she was talking about Black content. And I emailed her and was like, I met you at this festival, and you said to show me the work when I'm ready. Can you take a look at this? Would you be able to take a look at my work? And she's like, sure. But she probably didn't even, she's like, I meet so many people, I probably told this kid to to come see me. And so I emailed the DVD.
Wow.
And then a few months later, that's how it happened. And that's how it happened. And then also, like, I know we're not in person. Like Lorraine, like now I'm in a panel with her. I'm gonna send her an email. And I'll be like, remember I was on this panel with you, and you have this great organization, C15. I want to be a part of it. I want to show you some of my stuff and see if that works. And so, like, even like watching this is not, and it's just having the courage to. So it wasn't like I was living in a city where I had this access to people. I just somehow had the youthful gumption to put myself out there, and it's like, what will it hurt to just say that. Sorry, my son just walked in.
Of course, that's you're right. I mean, that's a lesson for all of us, right?
And I want to jump in there and and say, being pushy and persistent is very important in our world. I mean, and that testimonial, like if you are going to an event, a trade fair or whatever, you can't sit back, and keep your film in your pocket and hope somebody's going to see. You have to go and try and meet the people and reach out and listening to Kareem, those are the elements of success, passion, passion for your project. People feel your passion, people read that, and that makes them more interested for sure, and of course, perseverance, passion, perseverance, and hard work for me are like the key factors to success.
Awesome. I want to sort of literally have the rubber hit the road here and sort of become a little more specific with respect to, the commercial side of film, not just on the back end in terms of, the success of it and recouping and whatnot. But I want to talk about the beginning of it, you know what I mean? Before you have the film, when you have the concept and how you plan. And, even though, I know that we mentioned this at the beginning, there have been challenges in getting, we spoke about the conservatism of the Caribbean financial sector and the challenges in engaging corporate and the financing institution to support film. But, it would be remiss of us just to abandon that option because, at the end of the day, that is their business, right? They may attach a higher risk profile to it, rarely for lack of understanding or appreciation. But in every film, anybody who's been a filmmaker for whether it be 1 year or 30 knows that, the amount of commercial activity that happens in the lifetime of a film, right? There's a lot of commercial activity generated in that pipeline. And I guess I want to sort of solicit perspectives from both of you in like, what is the missing link from the perspective, from your discussions with traditional financing opportunities? You spoke, Kareem, about private equity, but at the end of the day, you're right, we need money, right? So what do you think, just looking at it from their end in the discussions that both of you have had with them, what is the missing link? What it is you think that they are attaching the highest risk factor to, whether because it does not exist or because they do not understand it? Do you think is more on the distribution and the returns? Do you think is the lack of confidence in being able to create the product that is sold? What is in your experience, what do you think that missing link is from their perspective with regards to supporting film? Sorry, let's go with you first. Let's hear what.
Me first or Lorraine? Okay.
Yeah, you go first. You go first.
From my experience, what I think the missing link is that people get some money together, they put it in one film, it doesn't make money, they feel like they're burned. And we know that's just not how the business works. we know that you have to invest in a minimum of 10 films for one to work that will pay for all those losses. So we need to have someone that's willing to commit for the long haul, to develop and to keep going. And so we have to know how to pivot. So if we know that we put our film, like what Lorraine said, in 120 cinemas, and we needed to keep it longer for a week, we should have an opportunity right away to do that second film. And then we know that that's not what we're going to do. And so in that second film, we realized that, you know, we had to have a day and date released, and we're able to do that. And then by film number 4 and 5, we are able to we're able to not only create an audience that's come to expect a product from us, but also the audience is able to grow. And that's been the biggest challenge, you know, to have like these gaps of time between films, and it feels like you're starting over again. And so finding that right investor that's like, hey, like, I know you gave like $1 million to this production and it didn't work out, but you have to look beyond that. Like, were people excited about it? Was it a good product? Did it develop an audience? And what do we learn? And how can we shift? And so just finding the investor to realize that, and just not, you can't think of the singular project. You have to think about where we're going to go. And I
hear you.
That's hard to.
I hear you.
It's hard to find that sophisticated investor.
Before I ask Lauren to give her views on the same comment, continue taking your notes, Lauren. I wanna, you know, sort of provoke that a little bit. For you, Kareem, I mean, you could take any one of your films, but like you mentioned private equity before, right? I want to understand two things. I want to understand, when you go to get investors and go after private equity, what specifically are you promising them in return? All right. And the second thing I want to sort of understand is, what typically is the makeup of your budget? So for example, you know, your budget, you know, you come up with your budget is $100. What I mean, you can give us any example of a film that, you know, okay, well, of that $100, $40 is private equity, some maybe debt equity, you know what I mean? 30% at a mortgage my house, you know what I mean? What typically would be a makeup to fund your budget? If you could just touch on those two issues.
So every project is totally different. So my narrative projects have been 100% financed through private equity, and what I'm promising is, I'm promising a possibility. Like, so I think it's always important to say that, you know, this may not make anything, but like, let's look beyond that, you know. But if it does, this is what's going to come back. So we have to be prepared to lose our shirt, and that's what I promise. And
okay, Kareem, I'm going to stop you right there, right? I'm going to pin you to the wall on this. I mean, a lot of people will slam the door in the faces of a lot of filmmakers who come with that. So, I mean, that's very interesting, right? So when you start that discussion, is it institutional private equity, or is it more personal, you know, people that trust, believe, and want to support your career? How do you start that discussion? Which door do you knock on?
It's personal. It's people who have read the script already, people that know me, and people that can see the financial viability of a project. You know,
so they trust you.
They trust me. Yeah, they trust me, and they know I'm gonna do right by the project. You know, the only things that I've ever recouped on so far has been my short films, you know, and my documentaries. You know, the narratives have been more of a challenge, but they've also been like so fragmented within my career. Now I think we're moving into a place where it could become more regular, and we're excited to see where that takes us. But I do have financial projections, and I have financial projections, and I do have like a kind of a story of where I want to see the film go and who it will reach. And oftentimes I'm able to reach those benchmarks in terms of like having it distributed in certain territories and making sure that everything I put there in terms of what is in my control, I am able to do and deliver on.
Do you leverage the distribution against the financing that you raise? Do you go out and get interest from distributors before you go to your equity people and say, listen, I have interest from these distributors? Or do you raise the financing and then go to the distributors and say, listen, I have the financing for the film, I'm looking for distributors?
That's what I'm doing now. So now I'm looking that there's a hole in the marketplace and there's people that are interested in it. I didn't do that before. And so that's the way I'm able to pivot now, is to go and see, hey, this is this project that I'm working on. I'm attaching this and this element to it. Would this be something and you know that you would be interested in, and what would be the value of that? Now I'm doing that, but I didn't do that previously, so I can't sit there and say that I've done that before. And that came with, like, you know, sort of getting older and a little bit more sophistication.
Awesome. Lorraine, what would you, I mean, on the same topic, what would you see as, you know, in terms of that makeup and the approach to fill it, in terms of equity, you know, debt, you know, how do you see, what has been your experience?
Well, as he said, every film is different. Every project is different in terms of the financial makeup. You know, you have those where, you know, people take their personal money and invest, or they bring in. I mean, I endorse a lot of what Kareem is saying. The first place to start is in the people in your circle. You know, you get your team on your side, and then they help you go out there and spread the message. I also want to add that success is, you know, is not just measured, we know this, in making money. Okay, I want to just make that clear, because, you know, we have to understand, and, you know, actually, even C15 understand, they lost money with Bazodi, but they understand that was a lesson, that was part of the learning curve. You know, you know, Kerwin, who I call my boss, not really my boss, but because, you know, we work together, but Mr. Kerwin Valley, who I see as a visionary, I mean, he said, that's our, you know, our research and development, that's our R&D. So we have to look at every opportunity and learn the lessons from them. And, you know, if you are a bit philosophical, you know that you grow more from your failures than from your successes, usually. So, you know, it is. So also, I want to go back to the start of your question, when you said, when you go to a financial institution, you know, and what, you know, how do you get them to buy in, you know? And I think that's really key to the audience out there to understand, like, when you're going to present, you have to be passionate. Like, passion is number one seller. Also, you have to come with some kind of, with a plan, like a plan of how you're raising the money. So maybe I'm coming to you all to ask, so let's say it's $100 project. I'm coming to you all to ask for $20, but here's where I have my other 20, I have my other 30, and then, well, maybe I have a gap. Like, I'm not sure where I'm getting this from. So I think it's important to be honest and real. Like, I believe I've lasted this long and done so much work in this industry because I've always been very straightforward and very fair and honest. And I think that's super important. Letting people know how it stands. You're not going to try and dupe an investor, because they're going to figure it out, you know? So it's better that they know, right, I need 100, but right now I have 70. You know, I'm not sure where I get the other 30 or whatever. In terms of how that is made up, Jason, I mean, as I said, it varies so much, and between the loans, or there are people who will mortgage their property to do a project. Between the corporate sponsors, if you know, it's so hard for them to see, and also the missing link, if you want to call it. And actually, I laughed when you said that, because when we were playing around with the tagline for C15, the missing link was one of the lines we played with. But now we're calling it the integral link, because we don't want to be, we're not missing. Missing has a negative connotation.
No longer missing.
No, we're there. We're strong. Our link is very, very strong. So, yeah, I think when you go to a bank with a project, they're going to be, skeptical and suspicious unless you have a track record. And that's, of course, different. If you have a track record, they're looking at you differently. And again, to come back to Kareem's point, like if you go to a bank and you come with your manager, your legal advisor, or whatever, it already shows that there's a certain amount of legs in this project, a certain amount. This is serious. It's not just a fella who, write a story and come in to try and make a movie, so and no disrespect to that person either, go for it. But what I'm saying is, as a financial person, they're going to look for where the legs are and what, where they can attach some kind of security to their investment. Remember too, financial people, it's not their money they're putting in. It's other people's money they invest in your project. You'll understand that, right? A bank doesn't invest their personal money. It's other people's money they invest in, any financial institution. So those people, like your friends and so on, and those close to you, they're putting their personal money. It's two different players you're playing with there,
Yeah, correct. I mean, it gets, you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the money that you spend is money that somebody has earned. And well, of course, they were treated like a young child, right? I mean, they want to look after it, and they are just concerned about their contribution to the project, in that case, money, as you're concerned about your contribution to the project, that is the creative product, right? So, I mean, it is warranted. I mean, I guess dialogue like this just helps us sort of understand. I want to sort of follow on, I mean, on that same general topic, just to continue from that. Like, tell us a little bit, Kareem, in your experience, like how many people, I mean, you could pick any one of your films, like, just to give us a sense of the universe, the commercial universe, as you speak, in terms of how many people you think would be hired on any one of your films, you know what I mean? So that we could understand the value of the cash flow, the people that would be benefiting from that production.
Okay, so the thing about production is so hard for me. I just put the delete button of how awful it is so I can do it again. So I'm gonna try and remember. So I'm gonna use the something we just completed. So we just did a 6-part series in the Bahamas. The budget was $330,000 US. So it's fairly low. We had a crew of 24 Bahamians, which is very low. It's not a huge crew at all. But we also came into the community. We shot on an out island during COVID. So the Bahamas is an archipelago of islands. So we shot on an island that's very, kind of remote, and so we all came into this community. We rented houses. We rented cars. We had to get catering. We had to hire nurses for our COVID protocols that were on set. So at the end of the day, we had within a community that has about 3,000 people, we're able in the course of 20 days to inject, $250,000 of the production money into that, but also the ancillary money of all these people coming into this village and going to restaurants and hanging out on their own time and adding to it. Obviously, a film like Cargo was a lot bigger. I don't want to say a number because I don't remember what the number is, but it was certainly double or maybe almost triple that when you factor in post-production as well. So yeah, but it's also, so films help a community not only with the artisans that contributed, whether they be accountants or crew persons or other artists, but also within that community that gets a boost because this crew is there and they're spending money in a village.
I hear you. Some we take for granted, huh? In my experience, a couple of years ago, we did a miniseries, animated miniseries with CARICOM. And, we consider ourselves small, a small studio. But at the end of the project, we had, when we were reconciling the accounts, we had taken it for granted the amount of money we spent and the role of people that were paid, right? I mean, we, outside of Trinidad and Tobago on that particular, well, animation is a digital production pipeline, so you can be anywhere, right? And on that particular project, I remember looking back after, and we had hired 31 creatives across 9 Caribbean countries. And you sort of take that for granted, right? You don't realize that, especially in animation, in live action, everybody's on the set, right? But there's so many people working, and it's only after you see the payroll that you appreciate how much commercial activity is being generated. Even though at the beginning of the project, you may have had, before getting the financing, you may have had $0. And at the end, you may have had $0, right? But between 0 and 0, there was a whole universe of commercial activity and people across the islands being paid and earning a living and supporting their families. And I think that's something that we somehow take for granted. Lorraine, what about, give us an example for like, I don't know, like an Abazo D or one of the experiences that you're familiar with. What would that look like in terms of people involved and,
Well, let's talk about Amazing Race, because that was quite big, like, in the sense where we literally went to be, he reached. We literally, we stayed at the Magdalena in Tobago. We were there for 3 weeks, took over like 50-something crew over there. And, all of this for a 24-hour day of shooting. And
wow.
I don't even remember the overall budget right now. But why I smiled is I remember before it started, I was broke. But when it ended, I was also broke. And I was like, wait, what happened? All this money came through my hands and I still don't have money. I should be able to go on a holiday or anyway. That is the joys of production. But it was phenomenal, as you say, in terms of the socio-economic impact, because not only did we involve, because, there was local steel bands involved, there were all the local drivers, the fishermen, so many people trickled down, so many people were on the payroll and, would have, we don't realize how much of the industry is involved. Actually, I'll give a little anecdote. On the, we didn't realize that the production crew, the Trinidad production crew, the local production crew, didn't realize how quick this thing happened. We thought it was lasting all 12 hours at least of a day. So in terms of planning the meals, we had planned the lunch at Buko there to arrive at 11 or 11:30. Anyway, the first contestants finished, I think, at like 10 in the morning. The first person arrived. So, of course, they're coming there. Now they're ready for their lunch. My caterer is not ready. What the hell are we going to do, And they're like, we need food, we need food, we need food. Ran up into the village, and the pie shop had just brought out, like, all their pies. We literally walked in and I bought every single pie that woman had made that day.
Woman make a killing.
Yes, it was like how much hundreds of dollars worth of pies, but she was thrilled, and they were thrilled because they got to taste right. This was some authentic, food. So, it's just, well, one thing, as we all know as filmmakers, you have to be resourceful. If you're not resourceful, you ain't making it in this industry.
Yeah, the pie woman probably clear her village debt for the last year. Well done, Lorraine. Well done, Amazing Race. We have now Michael with us. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Hi, morning.
I'm going to sort of throw you right in the deep water because we've been making our way out into the deep. And I'm going to throw you right in. So just to sort of give you some context, we're really talking about, where that creative and financial intersect and how we filmmakers can navigate it and what it is the financing institution and traditional finances, need to understand and learn. But I sort of want to take, I am familiar with your work and I'm sure many other people here. I think I sort of want to talk about Green Days by the River.
Yeah.
For many of us in Trinidad and Tobago, that film sort of, it felt big, it felt local, it felt us. Many films done in the past have done those things in varying ways, but everything from the historical and literature context all the way from seeing the imagery, you know what I mean? And and hearing ourselves. So it felt very big production and it felt very us, right? So you tick a lot of boxes there with one film, right? And I think that was your first directorial debut. So tell me a little bit about when you decided to saddle that horse. What for you was your I mean, going in and not in hindsight, was your first priority, your first aspiration, and how did you go about engaging the right people with respect to, now talking about the financial, the equity in making it happen?
Well, thanks for saying all that. I mean, we did try to tick a lot of those boxes, but I think as all filmmakers, especially maybe that's my first time directing a feature film, you definitely underestimate what it is. So I would have thought reading that book, like my first go, I was like, oh, I think we could do it for like, this me, not the producer, because Christian will be like, my girl. I think we could do it for $200,000. And I was like, oh man, we just shoot everything that is in the bush. Like literally, my first thought was something like that. I mean, I talk about first, after like first reading, just first thought like this easy. Then, of course, when you actually start to break it down, really think about those scenes, think about what you need, that changes dramatically when you really have a script in hand. And because that was my thought after reading the book as well, right? So now we're dealing with a script here. You look at how much scenes they're shooting, and it transforms from this idea of what you kind of quickly thought, hey, this might be that. And you realize, okay, we're going to need this large sum of money, 27 days filming this, and then it becomes a whole different monster now that, it becomes a battle that you have to kind of win. So I think, we all might underestimate the movie and what it might take. And, it begins to grow. And then you absolutely need to have a financial plan. And I think if it's anything, like the main gem that we realized in funding this film to get people on board was we never made this decision to sell it as an investment. But luckily, I think because of the intellectual property that we possess, which was option in the book, I think that was like the book was the star. So we were able to go to a lot of people who knew this intellectual property and kind of build a financial plan around it. And that's one of the major things that we went to people and we didn't say, invest in this movie, you could get back this amount of money. We went to people and said, we're going to create cultural value here. Invest in that cultural value. And that people were able to tap into, because whether they had read the book or not, they had heard of the book or this. It was familiar from over the years. And that cultural value is what people... So you normally, with anything, you have the friends and the family that you're going to approach first. That's going to be like your initial kind of momentum to get things going. But that take you so far. And then from that, you need to really bring on board maybe funds that you don't know, which kind of almost act as like, I want to say proof of concept or maybe a proof of funding. Because once people see certain financials come into it, I guess the project becomes a little more realer. So we always used to tell people, listen, because we luckily, thankfully, for you all might have different sponsors on this, but I'll just mention like B-Mobile was the first company that came on board, and they really allowed us to go to other people now and be like, we have B-Mobile on board, this happening no matter what. Like we would go to a meeting and just be like, the train leaving the station, we just don't know, like we had an idea of the budget, but we were like, we're making this movie no matter what we have. So I think people really were able to tap in and understand that, this is happening, because that's the next question. Basically, when you pitch to people, they're just going to ask you, like, they're assessing whether they believe you're going to do what you say you're going to do. That's kind of like what it comes down to. They're not really, they're assessing your project, but they're also like, are they going to reach the end? Is this going to get made? Like, the assessment is, are these people going to do what they say they're going to do? Or am I going to lose my money? Or just, so you got to present your stuff in that manner. And
yeah,
I think having other people on board actually helps that process, because now they're like, oh, well, if these 10 other people see the value, then maybe I could get on board too. And it's that type of momentum. And
Yeah,
last
of course.
we did have
go
like
on.
we did have like a Exim Bank kind of gap loan as well. So we kind of had private equity, a gap loan, and we did sponsorship. So between all of that, we built up some kind of budget and managed to make a film. But I would say, because when I came in, Lorraine was saying that, talking about our cash flow and all that, and yeah, we never had a full budget on our account. And I would say that's a huge handicap, because you're never actually working, like, you're always kind of catching up. And that never makes you be able to relax financially. So that's, I think, a huge problem in independent film. Even if you get committed, you don't have it. And when it comes in is the next story.
Of course. And you touched on some points we discussed earlier about the budget makeup and whatnot. You're right. That's the journey, right? I wanna come back to one of those things, but I want to take a couple of questions. I want to take a couple of questions now from the audience. And I will first put these couple initial questions to you, Lorraine. There is a question. I know C15 is now is now lifting off, right? But given your experience in the industry and knowing the vision for C15, what sort of products, what sort of films do you think C15 will support? People want to understand, what sort of content, what sort of films will C15 support?
Well, what sort of film? Definitely Caribbean content. That is our huge. There's not a specific, I don't want to say uplifting. I don't want to say, once a film, I think what's important, and as and Michael touched on it too, once you show that you have the legs to carry out the project, and that it has a raison d'être, and who decides that anyway? It's hard to say exactly what type of film will support. I can't say that off the top. I wouldn't want to say it. I want to say any good project, and what defines a good project, I'm not even sure yet. There's so many different layers, and that criteria, we are actually working on defining a criteria. And, as I said, what is interesting, our board is actually quite film heavy. So film was kind of the first focus of C15, but we are expanding it. And one thing too, what we are bringing, as I mentioned earlier, is cash flow solutions to creatives. So for example, when you're in a situation where B-Mobile has committed to giving you, X hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they're giving it to you in tranches, C15 will step in and advance you that money. Of course, for a fee, but a very small fee compared to what, you'll have to, well, banks don't even do that. So basically, we would be advancing against receivables, against, rebate funding and those, sponsorship commitments, pre-sales. So really looking to bring that those solutions, and we're not stopping there, because we are developing other solutions. One of the things that we lack in the Caribbean is like a completion bond insurance, and a lot of and that comes back to also what Michael was talking about. Like, people want to know, if I'm investing in your project, at least I want to know you're going to finish it. And how am I guaranteed that you're going to finish it? By the completion bond insurance, because and so, but these things, because there's no precedent, and insurance companies all about risk, the risk factor and so on, it takes a little time. As Kareem said, we're such a young industry. Even though we've been making films for over 60, 70 years, the consistency, and you touched on it, Kareem, too, there's so many gaps where there's no product. So, we have 1 year, we have 3 films, and then 6 years later, there's one, and then how many years later, there's, one. So that consistency, has to continue. And I'm glad to hear that Kareem said that, he made money on his documentaries and short films, because I think there's a huge market there that we're not exploiting enough. The short films, the documentaries, and so on. Everybody, the feature. Let's look at the other products,
Interesting. That sort of brings us to another question that was raised from Garco Media Productions. The question is, was there ever a plan to create a local or regional version of a Netflix model involving players from the cable or telecommunications community? Let me hear your thoughts, Lorraine, because I know that C15 sort of navigating that space to some extent, no? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, they were having discussions about that, C15, and there have been a few people discussing having a platform, as a Netflix of the Caribbean, if you want to call it that. I think I don't think it should be just one entity personally doing it. I think it has to involve different entities or different islands or different groups, or even tapping into something existing and having our own areas. So, for example, Netflix Caribbean. I know there's a Netflix Latin America. So, because I'm wondering, like in terms of the content, right now I know that Roku has something where you can actually go and stream, so where they have advertising on demand. So basically, it's free to watch the movies, but there are ads inside the films. So, there are different models being explored. I think it has to come into being, like it has to exist. I don't know if it's something that C15 is going to actively pursue as of right now, just because I think that's putting the cart ahead of the horse a little bit for us.
Yeah. And I know, we discussed this before, but there are a lot of different bodies outside there that are supporting those platforms that aggregate content. Filmco, Caribbean Tales, Flow, Digicel, and Be Mobile more recently have been supporting and trying to, they support it, but I think too, they've been trying to find ways to aggregate that content. So it's not that, as you mentioned, Kareem, you make one film now, and then, 3 years later, you're working on another film. So we got to get Michael, we got to get all the other filmmakers now to be like filling those gaps, right? To be able to give an aggregator the content to push. Netflix, as we know, is driven on aggregating content. Anytime the content that they have slows down or narrows, of course, the viability of that platform diminishes. And that's why
let me just add a fact there that I was listening actually on Stage 32 recently to a webinar. Netflix are releasing 45 films this fall, right? So it adds to your point.
Crazy,
if we have a platform and it has one film every 6 months or something coming out, no, people aren't going to subscribe.
I want to understand, I know Michael and Kareem, you have endeavored in this part of film, but when we talk about the aggregation of content and getting the content out there, obviously, for us in the Caribbean and the individual filmmakers, sometimes small bites is better, right? Getting out the shorts is much more doable than doing a feature film, which can be a little more intimidating and have a longer period, as you told us about, Michael. But what do you see, from really your experience in the, and I will ask you this from a different angle, and I want you to respond from the other side, Lorraine. But what do you all see as filmmakers in terms of Michael and Kareem in terms of doing these shorts? Kareem, before you came on, Michael, Kareem was saying the viability of shorts and that he has experienced even, correct me if I'm wrong, more viability or more, than in features. What are you all seeing as the opportunity for filmmakers in the Caribbean when it comes to documentary shorts or narrative shorts in terms of financial benefits or return? Let's go to you first.
Let me qualify that. Okay, let me qualify that. So in terms of recoupment, yeah, but there's not a lot of money put into it. So for example, my first film was not my first short film, but the first short film I made was a short film called Float. And with Float, I was able to, I won a festival and I won a prize. And then I was able to sell it to Viacom because they had a new station out called Logo that gave me a broadcast deal for the short. And they paid money for that, like a good money for that. And then so it was already paid back what I put into it. And then every licensing opportunity that came after that put the film into profit. so I'll qualify that. It wasn't, so it's not like I got a living wage. For the documentary, we put a small amount of private money, but we also got a grant that wasn't recoupable, that didn't have a recoupment. So yeah, so that's how it is. Yeah.
No, but that's what people want, Kareem. They just want to make enough to live to do the next one. You know what I mean? They don't want to. I don't think a lot of filmmakers expect to be millionaires off a short film, but they just want to survive and then do a next one and then grow in the way you have grown. What about you, Michael? What do you see as the viability and the opportunities with short film?
I mean, I think we should note, like, short films are definitely the space where I think filmmakers could make a little more errors. You don't want to be making any mistakes on your feature length, maybe, just saying. So I think it's good to note that, because for me, I could see a clear connection. I did the Cool Boys coming out and just graduated from my master's, my degree in UE filmmaking and production from University of West Indies. And I was lucky enough, the Trinidad and Tobago Film Company had a call on, and they funded the Cool Boys, right? And I was fully funded. First time I ever got a budget. I could probably say the amount, it was 200,000 TT, which kind of like, they get out to me, that was a lot for, and I ended up making a 30-minute short film that I thought would be a pilot for a TV series I wanted to do. And I don't think it came out amazing. It's like, but I made so much mistakes there. And I spent so much bad money that I learned how to get the money on screen. So maybe, filmmakers need to have like opportunities to do a lot of, and I can't see that happening on that experience, that I didn't learn so much that allows me to now kind of take on Green Days by the River. And kind of understand it better, because it was the first time working with a budget, and it was the first time being able to pay people to figure it out, to kind of work in a more formal filmmaking system. So I guess I just trying to say, to note that, these kind of incentives or these kinds allow filmmakers. So hopefully not all of them will, but some of them would, be able to learn and carry it on. So it's about making this way more sustainable, and you can make it for way cheaper. Like in hindsight, I would have done that film totally different and probably, done a lot more on these things. But the experience is what I'm saying. I think, because short films are like business cards to filmmakers, and it have some amazing short films out there. Like if you could do a solid, I would say 7 minutes. Like I think I approached it all wrong trying to do 30, you know what I mean? But if you could do like a solid 7 to 10, you can work that film festival circuit. Might be able to get into the bigger ones, like, whether it's a Sundance, a TIFF, or Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival, and all these different things. But I think the real thing is, like, short films, I don't know about the business and the commercial side, while that exists, is really about, I think, learning the craft. Maybe you should do 10 or 12, and it's about building your brand, getting your name out there. And you're right, maybe you don't need to rush the feature, but it is a world unto itself, and I think it's a space that just could help to build up your it's like business cards to filmmakers. That's what I like to call it. An amazing short film could do everything, like
could launch, yeah.
The other thing is, like anything else, we all want people, I know Netflix is the elusive type of thing, but we all probably one film away from Netflix. So made films that could possibly be on Netflix have a lot of things on Netflix that not that great, to be honest. But you have to be connected to aggregators, you also a distributor to get on Netflix. Netflix is an interesting beast, because they I mean, from what I know, and I don't know anything about them, but they play an algorithm game now. So if you look at our maths, the Caribbean, they probably get it at some point, but in terms of the algorithm, we are a small space, right?
Yeah, I hear you. And I mean, Dion McNichol Stevenson mentioned as well, Digicel Playgo and Studio Nancy, which also support the platforms that support and promote both short narratives as well as longer form. I know more recently Digicel Playgo had an engagement out there, call for short films. So I mean, these things help, and you're right, it becomes a calling card, and it allows you to take those next steps, right? Continue to take those next steps.
I would say one thing that I was really shocked about is, because we have our distribution deals, but largely we self-distributed Green Days by the River. But through that process, like putting Green Days by the River, like we went on Quelly TV, I was pleasantly surprised by like the amount of views we get in quality TV and you know things like that. Which and I end up putting on like other movies on the quality TV and all that. So it also makes you realize they have a lot of distribution platforms
a
out
lot
there
of
that
platforms, right?
yeah, we have ours
Yeah.
on Vimeo, and it's kind of like this. Like you can put it on bigger, say, streamers, and it might be something crazy like 10,000 views equate to $100. I don't know the exact thing, but think about how much people I seen a movie versus again. But I know we selling our film for $15 on Vimeo, and we get a couple hits a month. So, and our film is like 4 or 5 years old. So you just had to kind of start to realize now you had to do more of the work, but it have economics around it. And if you want to tell your investors that or funders, the thing is, as long as they don't expect like a quick return, you know, you can build it back up. So, you know, it depends on the grind you willing to do. Like I
Of
actually
course.
say you had to kind of make your movie successful. So,
Yeah, no, there are many ways to skin a cat.
Yeah.
Okay, we just have a couple minutes left. So I sort of want to solicit from each of you all very quickly, you know, final thoughts in this context, next steps, whatever you think is the most provocative or you know what I mean, in this context. Closing thoughts. Let's start with you, Lorraine.
Most provocative. Well, I want to stay positive. You know, I think the industry is in a good place. Actually, I don't want to look at it as dire. I think a lot of content is being built conceptualized during the pandemic. I think we're going to have a lot of stories to tell. I think the organizations in place, the film festival, the film TT, and Filmco, everybody's working hard at building the industry. So I want to continue to see that thrust. I am in a position now where I can help, not just financially, but on different areas, as you all will see, because networking is going to be very important too, as we all heard in these discussions. So yeah, I think the future for me, I think we've been in a dark tunnel and I seeing a bright future.
Awesome. What about you, Kareem?
Got it. What I see in the future, my final thoughts is that I just want to reiterate where I said before, like I'm not a person that came from privilege at all. And sometimes the assumption is that people that are in this business or have any level of success are people of privilege. I just would encourage everyone to put one foot in front of the other and tell the story that lives inside them, and that'll connect. And so the biggest part and the hardest part and the easiest part is actually putting yourself out there. So I would encourage everyone to put themselves out.
Awesome. Michael?
Yeah, well, I mean, like just even jumping off a springboard and about Kareem and Lorraine is interesting because if you think about it, somebody I once had heard a saying that, bankers talk about art and artists talk about money. I mean, because it have a thing that not, so it's weird. It's such a weird thing because, to make this art form could be expensive, but to continue that conversation of, I think, yeah, at the end of the day, is about producing content. And I think if you have that desire to do it, you'll find a way. And that's kind of because even in established industries, those filmmakers have passion projects that they still can't make. So it's never gonna have no cure. You have to decide if, while our industry develops, so I agree with Lorraine, it's not gonna stop developing. Timelines is another story, but it's not going to stop developing. And filmmakers not going to stop making content. We just probably have to find different ways. And of course, we need the models as it develops. So I think it's bright as well from that perspective of, if I know when I say nothing special about me, I mean, generally, I just like anybody else. And if I can make a movie, it just tells me I know other people can make films too. So, but no matter, it have hurdles to overcome, obviously, But I think you know, we still at a stage where it's about putting your movie on your back and climbing up the mountain. Hopefully with that, as more players get involved and stakeholders, it'll be like, hey, Mikey, I know you have 10 bags on your back. Let me take those 3 so you have 7, and eventually we get to a place where maybe you just have 2 on your back, but you're climbing that mountain still. And I think, you know, in an analogy, that is kind of the direction how it's going to get better, but I don't know about the timelines, but you know.
No, but you're right. We have to keep pushing. I think you're special, so I mean, you should think you're special too, because
you know what I mean, yeah.
All of you all I think have contributed significantly to the landscape, and we appreciate that. We appreciate you taking the time to sort of share that with us. And I think it was a great discussion. I learned a lot. And I'm going to pass it over now to Tennille Niwalo to wrap us up.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, that was a really good discussion. I think we lost Kareem, but thank you to all you guys, Kareem, Lorraine, Michael, for this very necessary and quite insightful discussion, I have to say. So again, this panel was brought to you with the support of Shell Trinidad and Tobago Limited. You can find a full list of the films and industry events on our website. We have more panels, ttfilmfestival.com. If you have any feedback, please be sure to share your experience with us via email, admin@filmco.org. And if you do happen to post about us on social media, please tag us. We like to remain connected to our filmmakers and friends. So on behalf of the TTFF, we hope that you all enjoyed this panel, and we hope to see you again at other events. Enjoy the rest of the festival, everybody. Thanks again, guys.